Hi guys, Bruno here with the Football Channel. Uh, the last three teams that still had to qualify for the Champions League this season just qualified. So now we have the whole picture of all the 32 teams that are going to be present in the group stage in the Champions League. So it's very exciting. We're going to have the draw tomorrow. So I just wanted to go through the four different pools that we have now and kind of talk about the what we can expect about tomorrow's draw. So looking at pool number one, we have Bayern Munich, obviously German champions. They won the Champions League just now in August. In my opinion, they're the best team in the world, so they're going to be very tough to beat. No one probably wants to be in their group. Then we have the Spanish champions, Real Madrid. We have the English champions, Liverpool. Italian champions, Juventus, and the French champions and runners-up in the last year's Champions League, PSG. So all very tough teams. And then we have three other teams, a little bit easier. Sevilla, still a very tough team though. They won the Europa League. They finished fourth in the Spanish league. They almost beat Bayern in the European Super Cup. So they're going to be very tough as well. And then the two easiest teams in, as you can see here, Pool 1, we have Zenit, Russian champions, and Porto, the Portuguese champions. I think Porto is probably a better team than Zenit St. Petersburg, but both Porto and Zenit are just not at the same level as the other six teams, especially the five big ones, the five big European champions of the five major European leagues. So that's Pool 1. Pool 2, very tough as well. You know, you can even make the argument that you have better teams in Pool 2 than in Pool 1. I wouldn't go quite as far, but it is an argument that you can make. Three English teams, Manchester City, Manchester United, and Chelsea, all very, very tough. Then you have Barcelona and Atletico Madrid, two obviously very, very tough Spanish teams. Regular features in the quarterfinals, semifinals, finals. So very, very, very tough teams. And then even Ajax, you know, in recent years they have been very strong, and Dortmund also very strong. Really, the only weak team in Pool 2 is really Shakhtar Donetsk, and they're not even that bad. So you can really make the argument that Pool 2 is even more competitive or even tougher. I wouldn't go that far because you do have the five big European teams right now, the five big European champions from last year, Bayern, Real Madrid, Liverpool, Juventus, and PSG on Pool 1. But still, Pool 2 really doesn't really have any weak teams. Unlike Pool 1, you can make the argument that Zenit and Porto, they're not quite as strong. So then you go to Pool 3, and this is going to be a tough year. We can have a really difficult draw for some teams, even some big teams this year, because there are some really tough teams in Pool 3 and Pot 3. Leipzig, they went almost all the way last year. I mean, this is a very tough team. They reached, I believe, the semifinals, so very, very complicated team. And then you have Inter and Lazio and Atalanta, three really, really, really tough Italian teams. They finished last year's edition of the Serie A. They really gave Juventus a run for their money. So, I mean, Inter, Lazio, and Atalanta are going to be really tough teams, and especially, I mean, they're not Pot 3 teams. I mean, these are very difficult teams. So, teams in Pot 1 and 2, they probably don't want to see one of those teams in their group, especially, I would say, Leipzig and Inter. Lazio and Atalanta are a little bit below, but they're also very tough teams. And then you have Olympiacos, the Greek champions. They're also not an easy team. And then Dynamo Kiev, Salzburg and Krasnodar. Salzburg, Krasnodar, Dynamo Kiev, and Olympiacos to some extent, much easier teams than your Atalanta, Lazio, Inter, Leipzig. And then pot four, yeah, I mean, you don't really have that many strong teams. You have Lokomotiv, Bruges, Mönchengladbach, which is a tough team from Germany, Rennes from France, not an easy team either, Istanbul, Ferencváros from Hungary, Midtjylland, and then you have Marseille. Marseille is it's they're not an European superpower, but they're a very good team. You could even make the argument that they're the second best team in France. And look at how well Lyon did last year. You can definitely make the argument that Marseille are even better than Lyon. So they can be a very tough customer for pot four. So what can we expect from the draw? I mean, there are many possibilities, but obviously you don't. If you're one of the teams in pot one, two, and three, you want to avoid Marseille in pot four because they're definitely the strongest team in pot four. Even though Mönchengladbach, they could be considered actually the toughest team, depending on how you assess their strength. But they were very competitive in Germany last year. I mean, they're a tough team. And Rennes, they're doing very well in League One and this year, and they did very well last year. So they could be sort of a dark horse there, or at least they can be very bothersome. And then obviously in pot three, that I think that's probably the key in this draw. Juventus is a little bit lucky because I believe they can't be drawn in the same group as an Italian team, so they're a little bit lucky. They just have to avoid Leipzig there in order to have an easier draw. But look, I mean, a team like Real Madrid, they could get Manchester City, Inter, and Marseille in their group, and that would be a hellish draw, really. I think we can really see some, depending on how the draw goes tomorrow. I think we can end up with some really tough teams, some really tough groups, maybe a group of death or two. I mean, the draw tomorrow really counts because depending on what teams you draw, especially on pot three, that can really change the face of the tournament for you. I think maybe we'll see this year. Usually, the big teams, your Liverpool, Juventus, Real Madrid, usually, they're used to having a very easy group stage, and then just really being concerned in the knockout stages. But I think this year it can be different. You can have, depending on the draw tomorrow, we can have a couple groups that really have, say three really tough, difficult teams in the group stage, and I think that's actually good because it's going to make for a more interesting Champions League. So I'm very excited for the draw tomorrow. Let's see what happens. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a preview today. Thank you.